Welcome back. Today we're going to be reading Where the Wild Things Are. This story and pictures are by Maurice Sendak. And in the classroom we always like to point out if any of the stories have received any awards. And Where the Wild Things Are received the Caldecott Medal. So before we get reading today, I wanted to go over some of the vocabulary words. And the first word we're going to talk about is the word mischief. Mischief means playful misbehavior or troublemaking, especially in children. And in the picture, we see the little girl being sneaky and coming up and trying to steal one of the cookies from the tray. So again, mischief. The next word is roared. And that means to utter a full, deep, prolonged cry. And here we see the lion roaring. Then we have gnashed, which means to grind one's teeth together, typically as a sign of anger. And here, if you look at his teeth, he looks really angry. And again, that's gnash. Then we have tame. And tame means not wild or trained to obey people. And here I have some wild animals and then some tame animals. Rumpus. Rumpus is a noisy disturbance or a commotion. Again, rumpus. So again, today we're going to be reading Where the Wild Things Are. Where the Wild Things Are. Story and pictures by Maurice Sendak. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind. And another. Look what he's up to there. His mother called him Wild Thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything. I don't think his mom was very happy with his choices. That very night, in Max's room, a forest grew. So up here, see the trees starting to form? And grew. And grew until his ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world around him. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through night and day. In and out of weeks, and almost over a year, to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all. And made him king of all wild things. And now, cried Max, let the wild rumpus start. continued. And continued. And continued. Now stop, Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Then all around from far away across the world, he smelled good things to eat. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are. But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No." The wild things roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye. And sailed back over a year, in and out of weeks, and through a day. And into the night of his very own room, where he found supper waiting for him. And it was still hot. All right, so now I want you to think about the story Where the Wild Things Are. Start with, was it fiction? Was it make-believe? Or was it nonfiction? Was it a real story? I want you to think about the events in the story. Is there something that could really happen? It said that he traveled for a day and a week and a year. Get your mind thinking. So some things that you can continue thinking about is a lot of you are familiar with story maps. Take a minute, ask yourself about the setting. Where did the story take place? Was it the same throughout the whole story? Did it change? Was the setting realistic? Or was it more fantasy? Or did it change from one to the other? Who were the characters? Did the author always call them by name? Were they people? Were they animals? Were they something else? And then see if you can sequence the events of the story. What happened at the beginning? What happened in the middle? And what happened at the end? All right, see if you can retell the story to someone. And then there's some extension activities. So, oops, sorry about that. So, first thing you could do is maybe some arts and crafts to go along with the story. So here they've made their very own crown to be king of the wild things. And they just took a paper plate, did some cutting and some decorating. In the middle, there's some used up toilet paper rolls that they've made into the characters. And then here is make a monster using two-dimensional shapes. Be creative. Some questions that you can answer or think about. What do you do when you are feeling wild? So Max was feeling wild and he was causing some mischief, and in the result he ended up getting himself in a little bit of trouble. What ways do you show when you're kind of feeling a little wild or frustrated or causing some mischief? And are there some better things to do? Whoops, sorry. There we go. You could create your own monster. So here it says Wild Thing Adaptations. So the monsters in our story had very specific things to help them survive. Think about if your monster is going to be living in water versus living on land, what would your monster need? How would your monster protect themselves? If your monster is going to be able to fly, do you need to include wings? Okay, so think about that. There's some really cool ideas here, and then you can create your very own Wild Thing Monster. And then here is kind of just some STEAM activities. And the one I liked is make your own tinfoil boat, and then you can see how far it can travel, maybe in the bathtub or in a Tupperware bin, or do the penny challenge. See how many pennies you can get to float in your boat. So some other ideas were a puff boat challenge, make your own wild thing, paper bag trees, a wild thing trap, and then the one I was just talking about is the foil boat. All right. So thank you very much. I hope that you've enjoyed Where the Wild Things Are. Bye.